Welcome back. Let's be blunt. You don't need six-pack abs, fancy cars, or bad jokes to attract women. The only thing you need is to know how to make her feel something no other man can. Not with words, but with the right silence. Not with roses, but with a story that makes her feel seen. Not with chasing, but with making her wonder, why can't I stop thinking about him? This video isn't for guys looking for cheap pickup tips. It's for the man who knows that true attraction isn't about action, it's about depth. And depth is something you can't fake. Number 1. The power of presence. Why women notice the man who says nothing. You don't need to speak louder, dress flashier, or laugh harder to be seen. In fact, that's the quickest way to blend in with all the other men trying too hard to be noticed. The paradox is simple. The man who doesn't demand attention often receives the most of it. Why? Because presence isn't about doing, it's about being. A woman can walk into a room full of noise and commotion, and her attention will drift not toward the loudest man in the room, but toward the one who's still. The one who isn't seeking the spotlight. The one who's grounded. Maybe he's just sipping his drink. Eyes scanning slowly, posture relaxed. Not because he's trying to look cool, but because he genuinely doesn't need anything from anyone in that room. That's what draws her in his quiet confidence. Modern psychology explains it through the lens of emotional intelligence. According to Daniel Goleman, women are wired to perceive emotional signals far more acutely than verbal ones. They sense your anxiety, your need for validation, your internal chaos. But they also sense your calm, your detachment, your control. And nothing piques feminine curiosity more than masculine stillness in a world full of noise. This is why attention follows presence. When a man becomes still, he becomes contrast. While other men fidget with their phones or adjust their shirts, he breathes. While others try to prove something, he just observes. While others lean forward to impress, he leans back because he knows nothing meaningful can be forced. He is not a storm, he is the eye of it. The practical takeaway is this: stop trying to impress and start training your nervous system to slow down. At your next social event, catch yourself when you feel the urge to fill silence with words. Let the moment breathe. Maintain neutral eye contact, not as a trick, but as an extension of your internal calm. If she speaks, listen fully. If there's a pause, let it exist. Most men rush to fill space out of discomfort, but a man who can sit in stillness owns the space. It's not about indifference, it's about self-possession, that rare ability to be centered in your own reality without collapsing into hers. Women can sense this like a sixth sense. When you're not trying to get something, you become something worth getting. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Live in agreement with nature." And in human nature, attraction isn't triggered by effort, it's triggered by alignment. A man in alignment with himself becomes magnetic without trying. No performance, no pickup lines, just presence. And presence, unlike charm, can't be faked. So meditate, train, breathe. Walk into the world with intention, not desperation. Sit quietly in a cafe with your phone turned over. Lift weights without looking around for approval. Be the man who doesn't need attention and watch how attention begins to find you. Because presence isn't built in a moment. It's cultivated in silence day by day. And in a world of men shouting for validation, the man who says nothing yet commands everything will always be the one she can't ignore. Number 2. The men women remember are the ones who made them earn it. When a woman shows interest, most men sprint toward her like a thirsty dog chasing water. They flood her inbox with emojis and praise, trying to secure her affection with attention. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment she feels she didn't have to earn you, she values you less. Not because she's cruel, because she's human. and humans undervalue what comes too easily. Attention is currency. When you give it away without cost, it loses all value. This is why the man who calmly matches a woman's energy, rather than drowning her in it, ends up in her thoughts longer. If she flirts, he doesn't explode with compliments. He offers presence. If she texts, he responds when he's available, not to play games, but because his time actually matters to him. She doesn't feel chased. She feels intrigued, and that difference is everything. Psychology has a name for this. It's called the scarcity principle, and it's brutal. Robert Cialdini's research shows we instinctively assign more value to what is less available. When your time, energy, and validation are doled out with discernment, not withheld with arrogance, but shared with purpose, you signal worth. People invest more when they feel they have skin in the game. She should earn your attention not because you're cold, but because your interest means something. That's the trap most men miss. They confuse generosity with overextension. But what you're really doing when you compliment too soon, reply instantly, or rearrange your schedule to fit hers is not generosity, it's neediness dressed as niceness. And neediness is the fastest way to dry up attraction. Real connection thrives on mutual effort. When a woman engages, tease lightly, show warmth, but stay centered. Instead of replying, "You're so beautiful," after a flirty message, say, "I like your energy, but tell me something real about you." She'll feel seen, she'll lean in. Not because you played hard to get, but because you stood where most men knelt. This isn't about emotional detachment, it's about value alignment. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Act with virtue, not for reward." In other words, don't perform for validation. Be rooted in who you are and let your attention reflect your standards. When you're selective, you don't just protect yourself, you invite her to rise to meet you. So next time she shows interest, pause. Let her curiosity grow in the silence. Let her make effort, not because you're better, but because she's worth the chance to show you she's serious, and you're worth more than giving yourself away for a few sparks of flattery. A woman remembers the man who made her earn his mind, not just his time. Because in a world of men offering everything up front, the one who waits to be discovered becomes unforgettable. Number 3, the mystery she can't walk away from. You think clarity keeps her close, but it's your mystery that keeps her awake. Men often rush to explain, define, and label everything the moment a woman shows interest. They want to be understood, appreciated, and above all, chosen. So they overexpress, they overshare, they answer every question like it's a job interview for love. And then they wonder why the spark dies faster than it started. The truth? Predictability smothers curiosity. When she knows exactly what you'll say, what you want, and how you feel, before she even has to earn it, you remove the tension that ignites attraction. You're no longer a man she's discovering. You become an outcome she's already solved. That's where restraint comes in, not the cold, manipulative kind, the kind that stems from self-control, from confidence, from a quiet trust in your own value. When she asks, "Where do you see this going?" and you say, "I'm enjoying this, let's see where it leads," you're not dodging, you're anchoring the moment in presence. You're letting the connection breathe without rushing to define it. There's a reason this works. Psychologist Bluma Zygarnik discovered that our minds fixate on unfinished experiences. It's called the Zygarnik effect, the tendency to remember the incomplete more vividly than the completed. When you leave just enough unsaid, she doesn't walk away with closure. She walks away with curiosity. That curiosity is emotional gravity. She'll replay your words, wonder what you meant, and try to fill in the blanks. Not because you're withholding, but because you're allowing space for her to invest her own energy. You're not just being interesting, you're making her interested. So if she flirts, don't dump your feelings like an emotional monologue. Say, "That's bold. Tell me more next time," and go back to your day. If she texts late at night, you don't need to respond immediately. Sleep, work out, read. Do something that reinforces your life doesn't pause when she enters. This isn't about games. It's about gravity. The less you explain yourself, the more she explores you. When your life is full, when your schedule reflects purpose, she feels the pull of a man who isn't waiting around for validation. You become an experience she wants to continue, not a script she already knows. Epictetus said, "Speak only what is necessary." In relationships, this becomes a weapon of attraction. Restraint isn't silence, it's precision. And when done right, it leaves behind more desire than 1,000 compliments ever could. So next time you want to impress her, don't. Be present, be real, and say just enough to leave the door cracked, not wide open. Because the man who leaves room for her imagination is the one she can't forget. Number 4, the story she remembers you by. You sit across from her at a dimly lit table. The conversation is flowing, but something's missing. You've covered your job, your hobbies, maybe even your gym routine. She smiles politely, sips her drink, and nods. But nothing lingers, nothing sticks. That's because facts don't stir her soul. Stories do. Telling her you love to travel won't make her remember you. But if you describe standing under the neon rain of a quiet Lisbon street, soaking wet after getting lost, jazz humming from an alley bar as you realize you've been chasing the wrong life suddenly, she's not just listening, she's with you. Women don't bond through logic. They connect through resonance. According to neuroscience research by Brizendine, their brains are wired for emotional processing far more intensely than men's. She isn't trying to evaluate your resume. She's trying to feel you, your raw moments, your quiet revelations, your stories that vibrate just enough to stir something inside her. That's what lasts. But this isn't about being dramatic or inventing wild tales. It's about choosing truth over performance. Real moments, real reflections. The time you failed, the time you changed, the night you couldn't sleep because something cracked inside, and the next day you booked a solo hike to figure out what the hell was wrong. These stories invite her into your inner world without selling her anything. And when you tell them, don't rush, don't over-explain, let the silence land. Pause after the punchline. Let her sit with the image of you staring at a campfire alone, asking yourself why you'd been chasing approval all your life. Then look her in the eye and ask, ever had a moment like that? That's when her guard drops. That's when real connection begins. Seneca taught us, if you would win a man's heart, let him see your wounds. The same holds true with women. When you reveal not just your accomplishments, but your emotional turning points, she doesn't just know you, she feels you. Practice this in simple ways. When your friend asks how your day was, don't say fine. Say, I saw an old man feeding birds alone, and it hit me how much we avoid stillness. When you describe life this way, you train your mind to see meaning, and that's what makes your words unforgettable. In a world addicted to surface talk, the man who speaks in emotional colors becomes impossible to ignore. He isn't trying to impress, he's trying to connect. He makes her feel something real, and that feeling lingers far longer than clever lines or compliments ever could. Because long after she forgets your job or your height or the brand of shoes you wore, she'll remember the story that made her feel like she wasn't alone. Number 5. The power of silence after vulnerability. There's something magnetic about a man who speaks from the heart, then lets the silence do the rest. In a world addicted to noise, most men over-explain, oversell, and overstay their emotional welcome. They reveal a soft truth, then scramble to fill the silence with nervous chatter, hoping to seal the connection. But what they don't realize is this: the impact of your depth multiplies when you don't rush to explain it. Imagine this: she opens up about her fear of being forgotten. You look at her, hold eye contact, and say, "I know what you mean. I once stood in a room full of people and felt completely invisible." Then, silence. You don't elaborate, you don't ask for validation. You let your words float, heavy with meaning, and you let her fill the space. That's the moment she leans in, not physically but emotionally. That's the moment your presence lingers. Psychologically, this works because of the scarcity principle. When something valuable appears and then disappears, it becomes harder to forget. The mind replays it, digs into it, tries to make sense of it. Cialdini explains this with clarity. People are more drawn to what they feel they almost had, but couldn't fully grasp. You become a mystery not by hiding, but by revealing just enough, then stepping back. It's counterintuitive. You'd think being emotionally available means talking more, but emotional depth isn't about volume. It's about timing, precision, and leaving room for her to feel rather than just hear. The Stoics knew this long before psychology gave it a name. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Let your words be enough." A man of depth doesn't need to prove his depth. He offers it freely, then returns to his own path without clutching for her reaction. So how do you apply this? Start small. The next time you share something real, something layered, don't follow it with a joke or an explanation. Don't send a "Did you see my last message?" text. Instead, go work out, write, build. Let her sit with the gravity of your presence. Let her miss you. It's not a game. It's a principle. Confidence doesn't demand attention. It creates space and trusts that it's felt. It's the difference between a firework and a candle. One explodes. The other glows quietly and burns longer. When you reveal truth and then step back, you're not being cold. You're being disciplined. You're teaching her that your words are not tools of persuasion, but reflections of a man who doesn't need to be understood in one sitting. And that's what keeps you in her mind long after the conversation ends. Let her feel your absence as much as your presence. That's where real attraction lives. Number 6, the memory she can't shake. You don't need grand declarations to make a woman remember you. You need moments, the kind that slip into her mind without warning and stay there anchored not in logic but in feeling. It's easy to believe that attraction is built through effort, through elaborate plans and carefully crafted messages, but what truly leaves a mark are those subtle emotional anchors. A glance held 2 seconds longer than necessary. A soft laugh shared over something only the two of you noticed. A sentence dropped in quiet timing, like, "That look in your eyes reminds me of how the ocean stares back when it knows something you don't." It's that sentence she'll hear again when she's alone in bed. It's that glance she'll try to explain to her friend and then realize she can't, because it wasn't what you said. It was what she felt in the moment you said it. Modern psychology confirms this. According to Goleman's research on emotional intelligence, emotionally charged micro-moments, especially those tied to novelty, vulnerability, or calm under pressure, are stored with heightened intensity in memory. She may forget the dinner spot, but she'll remember the way you paused before answering her question about your childhood. She'll remember how you looked at her when she admitted she sometimes doesn't feel enough, and how, instead of fixing it, you just said, "I get that," and let the silence speak for itself. You're not trying to be a highlight reel. You're trying to be a rhythm she returns to. That's how emotional anchors work. They're not planted with force. They're woven gently into moments when her guard is down and you show up not louder but deeper. That's why your presence matters more than your words. A man grounded in his values can create an anchor with a glance, a raised eyebrow, a quiet, "Tell me what you're really thinking," and then stillness. On a practical level, train yourself to notice. Pay attention to shifts in her tone. If her voice softens when she talks about her father, slow down. That's an anchor waiting to be made. If she laughs a little too hard at a silly joke, repeat it later and watch her eyes light up. That's your echo, your emotional signature taking root in her subconscious. Don't overdo it. That kills the magic. Anchors work best when they feel unintentional, authentic, fleeting. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity." When she watches how you move through tension calm, collected, deliberate, you become the contrast in her chaos, the stillness in her storm, and that's the kind of anchor no other man can replicate. So stop trying to impress her with the size of your actions. Start anchoring your presence with emotional precision. Because long after the texts fade, the likes disappear, and the conversations get buried under new ones, those tiny moments, born from calm depth and quiet clarity, will be the ones she can't shake. She won't know why, but you will. Number 7, the silence that stays with her. You don't have to tell her everything. In fact, the less you explain, the more she leans in. We live in a world obsessed with exposure. Oversharing has become the currency of connection, flooding social media with details, timelines, thoughts, and feelings in a desperate attempt to be seen. But what most men don't realize is this: the more you reveal too soon, the more she stops wondering. And once the wondering ends, so does the magic. Curiosity isn't created by what you say, it's sustained by what you don't. When she asks why you moved cities, don't give her the entire narrative. Say something like, "It was part instinct, part something I haven't fully understood yet." That line alone does more than 10 minutes of explanation, because you didn't give her certainty, you gave her a question, and her mind will replay it later at night, in the car, when she hears a similar story. You just became a thread in her inner dialogue. This isn't manipulation, it's awareness. According to the Zeigarnik effect, our brains remember unfinished tasks more vividly than completed ones. Unresolved information creates mental tension. When you leave spaces in your story, she fills them with imagination, with possibility, with interest. That's not just psychology, that's power. Most men try to impress through data. They list accomplishments, they explain their goals. They go into detailed backstories hoping she'll see depth. But depth isn't proven through detail. It's felt through presence and restraint. Let her discover you the way people explore old novels slowly, with wonder. Drop a line like, "There's a story there, but not for today," and then shift the focus to her. That moment becomes an emotional bookmark. She'll want to return to it, not because you demanded her attention, but because you respected her imagination enough to leave space for it. Epictetus once said, "Nature gave us one tongue and two ears." The man who speaks less but listens more becomes the man she trusts without needing a reason. And trust, once rooted in curiosity, becomes something far deeper than attraction. It becomes emotional gravity. So the next time you feel the urge to spill every detail, pause. Ask yourself if the moment truly needs your entire story or just a piece of it. Because when you start guarding your narrative with purpose, your words gain weight, your silence gains shape, and your mystery becomes a mirror where she projects meaning. That's what keeps her coming back. Not the facts, but the fragments. Not the conclusion, but the questions left lingering. You weren't forgettable because you were vague. You were unforgettable because you made her feel something without trying to define it. And in that quiet gap between what's said and what's held back, she finds herself thinking about you long after the conversation ends. Not because she knows everything about you, but because she doesn't. Number 8, how to train her brain to crave you without losing yourself. You don't need to chase her. You just need to know how her brain works and how to show up in it without being present. Attraction isn't about being around all the time. It's about how your presence makes her feel when you're gone. That's where the craving starts, not in the words you say or the compliments you give, but in the gaps you leave behind and the emotions you associate with your presence. Dopamine doesn't fire when everything is predictable. It surges when something unexpected happens, when she gets that random, witty text from you that catches her off guard, makes her laugh in the middle of a stressful day, and then silence. No follow-up, no double text, just space. That space becomes the hook, because now her brain ties that emotional high to your presence, not just to what you said, but to the mystery of what comes next. This isn't a trick, it's neuroscience. Schultz, 2015, explains that intermittent reinforcement, unpredictable rewards, triggers stronger dopamine responses than consistent ones. That's why slot machines are addictive. It's not the payout, it's the uncertainty. You don't know when the reward is coming, and that keeps you coming back. Most men overplay their hand. They think consistency equals reliability. And while that's true for commitment, it's a killer in the early stages of attraction. If you're always available, always responsive, always trying to say the right thing, you become background noise, predictable, processed, forgettable. But when you mix presence with discipline, something changes. You show her something exciting, then disappear into your mission. You're not ignoring her. You're busy, you're building, you're in motion, and now she's checking her phone, wondering when the next spark will land. That emotional rhythm is what conditions desire. A late-night voice note after a day of silence, a compliment tucked into sarcasm, a let's do something followed by a week of quiet focus. You become the source of emotional spikes that her mind starts to crave. Not because you're playing games, but because you're not needy. You give value, you disappear, you return with more. Epictetus said, "Control what you present." That's not about pretending, it's about intentionality. If your energy is limited, spend it like gold. Don't flood her with presence. Let her earn it. Let her anticipate it. That anticipation becomes the emotional glue. You're not here to be her entertainer. You're here to be her disruption, her unpredictable relief from the monotony of daily life. But you can only do that if you're rooted in your own life first. So next time she texts something sweet or flirty, don't rush to respond. Read it, smile, and go back to your workout, your book, your business plan. Let her wonder, let her wait, because the space between your attention is where the craving lives. And if you do this right, you won't have to chase her. She'll be the one refreshing the chat, replaying your words in her head, and wondering what emotional hit you'll deliver next. Not because you're manipulative, but because you're unforgettable. Real attraction isn't about winning her. It's about making her fight with herself when she thinks about you. When you create space with calmness, with depth, with what's left unsaid, you don't just appear in her mind. You haunt it. She can't stop thinking about how you looked her in the eye, about how you said so little and made her feel so much, about the silence you left after a simple statement like, "There's something I've never told anyone." That's not a trick. That's presence. It's masculine restraint. It's attraction that comes from within. If you want to learn how to touch her mind without touching her, subscribe now, turn on notifications, and comment below this. I don't need to chase. My presence is enough to make her come. We'll go further, but only if you're willing to do the scariest thing. Become completely silent and let her feel you.